Mni Sota Original is made possible by the State Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.
On this edition of Mni Sota Original, founders of Two Dance Center, Toni Pierce Sands and Yuri Sands embrace the connective power of dance. Inspired by antique toys, mixed media sculptor Kyle Fokken combines dogs with airplanes and churches with tanks. Native American tradition and innovation are celebrated in Mni Sota, reflections of time and place, an exhibit seen throughout the state. And Joey Ryan and the Inks perform at the Varsity Theater.
Can we remember what it's
We always felt like dance needed to have a place. So the Two Dance Center's focus is all about providing multiple access points to dance.
We feel like everybody dances. We've experienced it in our lives as dance surrounds all of us and not just people that study it.
Good, keep your back moving.
Toni and I met in New York when we both were dancing there with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater.
I'm from Minnesota. I'm from St. Paul, born and raised. Yuri's from Miami. And I always thought that I'd go back to New York, and Yuri came. He just fell in love with Minnesota. He kind of brought this perspective of the possibilities of creating our own work. The creation of the beginning of Two Dance was really about opportunity. You know, there were a lot of dancers that wanted to dance, that wanted to have work created, so we kind of were like, okay, we had no idea what we were doing. So we started at a small black box, the University of Minnesota. All these people showed up to see this performance. Then we were like, okay, now we can move into the Southern Theater. And, you know, then from there was O'Shaughnessy to selling out the Ordway one night. So ending up staying in St. Paul and creating our own organization and starting with the Two Dance Company and now moving into the Dance Center, Two Dance Center. That vision that Yuri had about creating a place here has really coming to, you know, fruition in a lot of ways for us now.
I had this bug that I wanted to choreograph works.
Rest, good. Usha, can you come in right there at that moment on a back?
It's just been great to come in here at the wee hours of the night and put on music and, you know, kind of maybe dance around a little bit or imagine my ideas without disturbing my wife.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's what the center has been very helpful.
To our marriage.
To our marriage. The Dance Center's programming has not only a pre-professional program that trains aspiring young artists to become professional dancers, it's a space that's a home for the professional company, for Two Dance, you know, to do its rehearsals. For us to bring in world-class artists like Dwight Roden.
Let's do this one. PK Coupe here. I am the artistic director of Complexions Contemporary Ballet in New York City. Make sure this is sharp. I'm a freelance choreographer. I do works all over the world, and I get to see a lot of companies. There's an incredible amount of integrity at the foundation of what Toni and Yuri are doing. They're very dedicated to the art form of dance. They clearly love it. And what they do is that they sort of transfer that love for dance onto their dancers.
Closer, closer, closer.
Two Dance is truly original.
amazingly high expectations.
You have 6 counts for the feet to move.
Toni and Yuri from the very beginning have pushed me. They are so good at encouraging me to continue to try new things.
Go. There you go, there you go. Now, when you finish this, you have to find your focus. You have to find a place, and then you bring that with you.
The company rehearses at the Two Dance Center during the daytime, and then after that, the center is open to classes as well as the pre-professional program for our young aspiring dance artists.
I think we had ideas about how we wanted this school, but it kind of keeps showing itself to us. We kind of need to just stop and listen.
Run forward. Pressing, 9, 10. Let me see the presence you're working on. Open your eyes wide. Good, we're gonna come back out and do this again. Good, that was hard. It's actually your muscles working.
These students pass through these doors and they're asked to become a part of a world that they've imagined. Yeah, we just saw that beautiful thing and then it made us all go, spark, 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 spark. Oh, yeah, it makes me think like this and feel like this. Yeah, we have to do that in the movement. It has to make you feel like something. Make sense? Yeah? Okay, brilliant. First group. They're training in ballet, they're training in the Horton technique, they're training in a Gaga-based, in a modern technique. They're doing repertory, they're doing West African. These are all styles and techniques of dance that are grounding for young dancers.
The Horton technique is based on strengthening and stretching at the same time. And it's designed to build like really strong dancers, as we can tell when we're sore after class every day.
Now we've been working on going from a turned out position to a parallel, right? So that
You'd think it's natural to stand on 2 feet and balance.
flex that foot, stop.
But then when you have to make sure your pelvis is in line and your chest's not out, but you're letting your colors fill the room and your shoulders are in line and everything's square, it's harder than you think, and sometimes you just have to be like, I'm doing this and I'm breathing and I'm okay.
You have to get out of your head.
Yeah.
You can't be thinking about it.
When you get it, it's kind of magical. Look what I did. Hey.
These students have to understand that techniques that they're learning, like the Horton technique, was created on dancers, and we're constantly honoring that idea of legacy. There's other people who committed their lives to this work in order for you to do it.
5, 6, 7, here we go. And 1, and 2, and 3, next group, and go.
Watching the other company members makes me feel even more inspired to do this. I want to grow up and dance.
I start off with some basic forms. I've got templates of all these different pieces, like the torso piece, the legs. I kind of tend to play with the form just to kind of see what kind of dog it is. Is it going to be a high jumping dog? Is it going to be a fast dog? Is it going to be a slow, strong dog? Because, you know, I have some sort of idea as to what sort of feeling I'm trying to get, but I really am open to seeing what else can happen with the form. When I see a piece like this, I think of something a little bit more clunky, a little bit more kind of like a 1920s sort of car, maybe a little bit of a hot rod or muscle car sort of feel. And then I can kind of fudge with the forms. It's like, okay, well, what does this mean? Is this some sort of weird dorsal fin, or is it more like a butterfly, or is it more like some sort of older monoplane? Something like that. There's all different types of ways you can kind of play with your form. These are all the same forms. The front leg, I've elongated it. And this is just the back leg. But instead what I did is I flipped it upside down. So it has a little bit different connotation. And if you add some springs on there, you pretty much got this weird sort of grasshopper-looking thing. As far as like, real training as an artist, I mean, I don't know if I really had one, I just had an interest. I was in a technical college studying electronics, and a friend of mine told me, he says, you're always drawing, why don't you just go and take a class with a community college, see what happens. And I just loved it. My mother, when she was a kid, she used to draw a lot because her mother was a widow and they had nothing on the walls. My dad was an artist also, in the sense that when he was a kid back in the 30s, he would actually make toy trucks out of wooden cheese boxes and spools. So there's this idea of like, you don't need a whole lot. You can always figure something out. There's always something out there that you can make into something else. Something I've got here is an old drill, and just your typical $5, garage sale type thing. And, this would be some sort of interesting sort of proboscis. There's a rhino beetle. The work that I'm interested in is kind of something I refer to as kind of almost like a make-do aesthetic. And it kind of comes from my roots. It comes from the fact that we just didn't have a whole lot of money. So when I was a kid, I would like make model airplanes and model cars, and I only had enough paper route money to go so far. So I would take the same piece and remake it. Sometimes there's only one way to get that certain look or that patina, and that's by finding something that's already existing. I would actually refer to my work as mixed media collage. There are a lot of people that would refer to my work as maybe like junk sculpture. And I think the difference is that a junk sculptor is more all about the junk. I tend to like to hide things like that. Like this particular plane behind me is actually made out of like 8 mailboxes. I bought at a local hardware store, and so I'm loading on my cart with 8 mailboxes. They're going like, "What are you doing with all these things?" But it's just that I couldn't find any other sort of material that worked as well, so that's why I used it. The current piece I'm working on right now is called Cultivator. Where did my steeple go? Kind of the reason I started playing with the whole church thing is not necessarily so much as religious symbolism as much as it is about culture. When I was a kid, I used to see little churches dotting the landscape, and they almost looked like these little white ships in the distance because the landscape was so flat. And when you think of the concept of like even covered wagons going across the Great Plains, you think about these mixed elements. Even tanks at the time were actually thought of as land ships. There's a sort of idea of like what is meant by cultivation. I mean, is it a cultivation of religion? Is it a cultivation of warfare? So then you get that concept of like, is religion oppressive, or is it something that will, start the next generation? Is this good? This is bad? What is meant by cultivating? And I like leaving that open because it doesn't really belong to me or my opinion anymore. It belongs to whoever shows up. And I think that's kind of intriguing, because if you do something it's just so spot on where you hit people over the head with it, I think it's kind of boring. And I think you tend to walk away and go, okay, well, I don't need to see that because I know what that's all about. The role of the artist is the canary in the coal mine. I think we're kind of the research and development wing of culture. We really need to be out there on the edge to kind of like think about things that nobody wants to talk about. Artists have got to be fearless and not be afraid to try things.
Mni Sota, Reflections of Time and Place, is an exhibit that highlights the artwork of 19 Native American artists that all have ties and relationships with the land base of Minnesota. And so we've chosen to highlight tradition through the lens of innovation, recognizing that things that have become traditions were at their initial stage, they were moments of innovation. And those moments of innovation have continued throughout our historical practices. So beadwork is a prime example of that. Beads are not a native product to this land base. Beads were an object that came available through trade. So the moment that our ancestors took beads, this foreign item, and incorporated them into already established artistic practices, that was a moment of innovation. And that moment of innovation has flourished into this fantastic tradition. And then that tradition now continues to evolve and flourish and branch off into different directions. So we have people that still practice traditional beadwork, and then we have artists that continue to experiment with different forms of beadwork. And you know, every time a new material has become available, people take and run with those materials, and the practice grows. So we have artists like Cheryl Minima, who creates bandolier bags, and bandolier bags are an example of an art form that was also a combination of native practices with influence of European trade. So the form itself is something that was influenced by contact with European people. But the beadwork and the floral motifs and those things are particularly Ojibwe. And so this particular bag is an example of a more traditional style of bandolier bags and Ojibwe beadwork. Whereas Melvin Lush's bandolier bag has those influences, but this bandolier bag is particularly Melvin in the fact that Melvin has taken that idea of a floral bandolier bag and exploded it, you know, where it includes almost everything that you would see in a woodlands environment. You know, we've got the floral designs and the blueberries, which are particular to Ojibwe beadwork, but we have bees and butterflies and ladybugs and dragonflies and spiders and spider webs, and he said there's a wood tick in here somewhere too. So this one is very much Melvin's interpretation of a woodlands floral style beaded bandolier bag, so it's very particularly him. And then if you work your way down to Cecile Taylor's work, she has taken this idea of the floral Ojibwe bandolier bag and it's come to life in a three-dimensional manner. And as far as I know, this is most likely the first three-dimensional bandolier bag that's been made. And that spurs from the fact that that's her passion, is creating three-dimensional beadwork. It's a beautiful example of those moments, you know, those moments that can create traditions in and of themselves, and those moments that not only draw from our history and our relationships with our ancestors, our relationships with our tribe and that upbringing, and then the aesthetic that is so particularly a part of who you are, but also really gaining influence and inspiration from your individuality as well, and that desire to just push your creative process. The pieces that Frances submitted as a body of work to also be included in this exhibit, the title of this body is What I Learned in Boarding School, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The boarding school era was a moment of our history that was another portion of the attempt to assimilate our people. Children were forced to leave their homes and go into boarding schools, and a lot of these boarding schools were extremely abusive. And so Frances has used this form of art to record that moment in his history. And it's an extremely difficult portion of our history to acknowledge. And I really admire his courage in being able to use this art form for what I see as a moment, it's a tool of healing. You know, because we have to be able to acknowledge hurt and trauma before we can grow past it. We have artists that draw from their traditions, they draw from their teachings, they draw from tribal practices and understandings of our worldviews. And some of them do them in old modes of making, but there's examples here of people who may be creating new traditions that we just don't know are going to become traditional practices at some point. So it's really about celebrating our creativity. Our creativity determines what we're going to do with that indigenous knowledge.
We thought you'd know, but you don't know what may have been. You never said too much, my friend. Don't you it's all I can remember, it seems. Well, spit out the sickness, close your eyes and lick this wound. Let's recover soon. Pittsburgh landing, you know how the gun moves through. Well, bring on creation. Can we remember what it's like? Dancing further into
My name is Joey Ryan.
I'm Chris Mitchell.
And we're called Joey Ryan and the Inks.
We've been playing together since fall of 2008.
We play some melodic indie pop, I guess you could call it. A lot of harmonies, 3-part harmonies.
One of my friends called it crooner rock. I kind of like that.
I do most of the writing. The writing process has changed a little bit from our first record. The first record was basically a batch of songs that I had and then brought to these guys very close to finished, but it's changed in a little bit, so now I have the general idea of a song and I'll bring it to them and we'll all kind of work on it together as far as the instrumentation and certain ideas, and by the end of it, it sounds nothing like, you know, what I brought in, which is way more exciting to me.
Mni Sota Original is made possible by the State Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and the citizens of Minnesota.